if Julian is extradited to the United States, it's really the end of a sense of real freedom. We can pretend, and some of us can imagine we have it, but we will no longer be able to seriously dissent. We will no longer have the right to know what governments do in our name.
So that is the late, great John Pilger from an episode of Randy Credico's show, Live on the Fly, the Assange series, Assange Countdown to Freedom. And I just want to thank everyone for being here. We do have a bit of an echo, so I'm going to ask everyone, maybe if everyone could mute when others aren't talking. I'm not sure what's happening, but yeah. Okay, perfect. So I just first did this 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, when Assange was dragged out of the embassy. And I think, if we all stop and think for a moment, like, I think we all kind of went into some sort of time warp during COVID, right? But what it was like being locked in your house for just that amount of time. And he's been in there much longer than any of us experienced that lockdown. And, when you look at the charges, it's just preposterous for what he's being charged with, excuse me. But all of the candidates here, like every panel we've had, are from different parties. I want to emphasize, I know all of you are here probably because you realize that this issue is not a partisan issue at all. And if you care about knowing the truth of what your government is doing, you should speak up. So my whole purpose for doing this is that I really want to start, help in any way I can to get candidates talking more about this, and maybe then talking with people as they're campaigning as well. So why don't we start? We'll just go around, and Matt, you jump in, and then we'll let each candidate introduce themselves.
Sure. Thanks, Kelly. I'm Matt Ho. I'm Kelly's co-host here. I want to thank everyone for joining us. This is the third one we've done, and we hope to do many more. And one of the things that's interesting, as Kelly has said, and the expectation is it will remain this way, is that we do have a cross-section of political affiliations here. So everyone we've done, we've had Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians, Greens. So it's been really great to see that intersection. And what I think is important to note is that this intersection, in terms of support for Julian, it focuses on some really important, really key issues that often don't get discussed in an election in a manner that people connect to. And those issues tend to be issues of anti-war. They tend to be issues of surveillance and privacy. They tend to be issues regarding how our justice system works. And you can see how all of those intersect in Julian's case. So I really appreciate not just you all being here tonight, but as well you having this conviction, having this courage, and having this desire to speak out on behalf of Julian Assange, and to have as part of your campaign the idea that journalism is not a crime. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly because I can't see. Oh, now I can see it. So I'm going to call on the persons to my right, Sean Doherty, who is a Green from California. Right, Sean?
Yeah, that's excuse me. That's right. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Sean Doherty. I'm running in California's 19th district. So this is for the U.S. House. My campaign is focused mostly on an anti-war message. The slogan of my campaign is peace, justice, climate action. I started running back in July because of the Ukraine war. I had gone into my congressman's office multiple times armed with studies. Probably a lot of people here have seen the Quincy Institute survey that showed that a strong majority of Democrats actually favored a diplomatic resolution in Ukraine. And now, of course, my campaign is focused on Gaza. I couldn't do anything else but focus on that. So I don't consider myself an expert on Julian Assange, but I've always been a supporter of his. I donated to his legal fund. I remember when he was pulled out of the embassy, I was just in a daze. I was stunned. I guess at some level I knew that was going to happen, but when it did finally happen, I couldn't believe it. And I just wandered around my city for maybe an hour trying to digest it. I think that's an adequate introduction to me. I'd like to let the other candidates introduce themselves.
Yeah, I want to jump in real quick and just say that, and we said this before we went live, that, almost every candidate I reached out to said back to me, I'm not an expert on the case, or I don't really know much. I can't add anything to it. And I think, first of all, as we've played at the opening, the last two panels we did, I had Nils Meltzer talking about how all the false narratives and the kind of the misinformation. So it's not surprising that most people don't know very much about it, don't know about the case. There's been a media blackout about it. Also, it's just really, really complicated. And so I always share Stefania Marizzi's book and also Nils Meltzer's book or Kevin Gosztola. There are a lot of great people that have written extensively about it if you want to know more. I myself am not an expert on it. It's a lot. So I just appreciate anyone that, even if it's just on one point that you want to make here, I just appreciate the candidates speaking up. So with that, we'll go to Todd.
Yeah, I'll myself unmuted here.
I'm down in Florida, CD3, right next to Todd. And I have been running since 2016. I jumped in when I noticed the DNC had totally trashed Bernie Sanders. So I am now 73. I was 65 when I started and have been using my Social Security with very little else to run a campaign that frightens the heck out of the capital D Democrats. I am running as a Democrat, and as I explained to Dem Exit people, in a Florida closed primary, the only way you can win is to first take out the Democrat in the primary and then take out the Republican in the final. And it took me 6 years of those 8 to figure out that there was something we could do about the nexus of all evil. And the nexus of all evil is the Supreme Court in the United States. Other countries, the US has imposed horrible constitutions upon, as in Chile, Argentina, Iraq, probably several others. Here we have a magnificent constitution which has been shredded by unconstitutional precedents, which all the other judges then obey. Well, obeying a false precedent is not good behavior. And that phrase, good behavior, is one I've been using for the last year, effectively. And I'm recommending that phrase to the other candidates because I want to see all of y'all prosper. And I'm trying to give away or have people steal, if they want to think proximity, my campaign, which is, it begins with throwing out the Supreme Court before they kill us all. And today they gave another example of that, which remotely touches upon Assange's case, that yes, we will decide that Trump, it would be real extreme to remove his possibility of getting reelected just because of a little insurrection. That was basically today's result. But before that, they created the unique in the world, and I would welcome comments upon any of these issues, unique in the world, government of, by, and for bribery, where both parties are completely subservient to the corporate donors, or they won't get elected and they'll never have the chance to do all the wonderful things that they really think they want to do.
Well, Tom, what's the number one reason that you are here, to support Assange? What is your main? What do you think?
Well, the reason Assange is in jail is because a realistic view of what he released shows that we are fighting wars purely for corporate profit. And everything is for corporate profit. So as long as that system is in place, and as long as judges are owned by that system as well, there's no way to get a result different from what we expect the result to be. They will move papers around, and they will shuffle papers, and they will make arguments, and they will pretend, look seriously about protecting the rights of this fine gentleman, but they will convict him.
Okay, well, we are going to get into the indictment a little bit in a bit, but we'll go to Todd now. Let's see.
Sorry about that. I'm Todd Schaefer. Like I said, I'm right up the road from you, Tom. I'm running for Florida's 4th district, which is northeast Jacksonville up to Fernandina, which is where I'm at. I'm a retired Navy, and part of my political awakening was Julian Assange's releases that were talking about all the war crimes that had been committed in the Middle East, and being active in the military and hearing that those things were happening, and that eventually that boiled down to Obama coming out and doing a speech saying he wasn't going to prosecute Bush, and he said we tortured some folks, and that started me into down the path of looking into how our constitutional rights have been eroded slowly but surely. And now we've got this Australian citizen who we are prosecuting as a traitor to the United States somehow. And it has ripple effects into everything we see day to day. We self-censor. Ever since this has started, we self-censor in conversations that we have with each other. Any news that you watch, they're self-censoring because their job depends on them not crossing that line and crossing the government's story, I guess. And I think we're in a dangerous time. And if I could, real quick, I want to read a quote about free speech from the Supreme Court. Justice Anthony Kennedy: First Amendment freedoms are most in danger when the government seeks to control thought or to justify its laws for that impermissible end. The right to think is the beginning of freedom, and speech must be protected from the government because speech is the beginning of thought. And if we are self-censoring, if we can't have normal, cordial conversations with each other about things we disagree with or disagree with our politicians with or about, we're in dangerous times. We're in very dangerous times. That's where I'm coming from.
Michael? Oh,
hello, everyone. And first of all, I want to thank, am I on now, Kelly? Yes, I want to thank you for the invitation. And Matt, thank you also for the invitation. And it's an honor to be here. I'm Michael Dublin of the North Carolina Green Party, and I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives from NC Congressional District 2. I am not an expert as I relate to Kelly, yet she still encouraged me to come on. And I guess my angle, as I think about our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and being a teacher, a middle school teacher, social studies teacher, this is something that we in the curriculum. But it's something that, in my life, in my history, I've been aware of not everybody having First Amendment rights. And I mean, part of that is being an African American growing up in the South, so that ties into it, and being taught some of the things that happened during the civil rights movement with the government wiretapping a lot of the civil rights leaders, and also just being aware of when the military-industrial complex cranks up. And it didn't just start recently. You can go back to the 1917, the Sedition Acts, and where it was, you get arrested just for speaking against the war effort. That goes into World War II. Whenever, again, the military-industrial complex in the United States cranks up, and again, as I said before, into the civil rights movement. And for those of us that lived through the Cold War, we know there are some things that we couldn't talk about. I know in North Carolina, even until recently, I'm really gonna go back on you guys. It was hard to find information about what happened in 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina, when there was a coup and the Democrats overthrew a duly elected government in that city. And finding information about that incident was difficult, at least for the next 80 or so years, because of the government cover-up. So this is a pattern that's been going on for a long, long time. So when it came to Julian Assange, I first heard about it through the WikiLeaks incidents, and for me, it did not surprise me because, as I said, this type of behavior historically was put in, action by our government. And so, as I look more into it, nothing surprised me about the government, putting in a fake case, building up, fake evidence, making up stories about someone, with the quote unquote rape charges and all these other things that were trumped up against him. And for me, I think that's par for the course for our government. And so that's why, I'm running as a Green Party member. I am the Green Party. I am a member of the Green Party, I should say. I grew up as a Democrat, as many African Americans in the South did. Then later on, I saw where the Democrats were becoming more pro-war, moving more to the right, not standing up for the workers, and giving empty promises for health care. And that's why I am running. I'm a member of the Green Party, and I'm running for Congressional District 2, U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think Ray might want to just hang back. So Ray, if you change your mind, want to introduce yourself, I'll let you go. But let's go to Teef Gibbs.
Hi, Teef Gibbs. I'm in California, running in the 2nd Congressional District. And I'm just on this call because I'm here to learn. I got my political awakening during COVID and all the lockdowns and all the government overreach that happened. And the current administration is fighting for the right to censor us. And so I'm a pretty big supporter of the First Amendment. I'm a member of the California Rifle and Pistol Association. I'm endorsed by them. So I'm also an avid Second Amendment supporter. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to play a clip. I have so many great clips from Nils Meltzer. I'll probably have one every time. But this is a different one. And he's talking about whistleblowers and how important they are.
I always say whistleblowers, which are the people that supply WikiLeaks with information, they're the alarm system of a democratic society. They're like a fire alarm.
You call it a safety valve as well.
A safety valve, exactly, or a fire alarm. So, something's wrong, there is some smoke, there goes the whistle blows. It tells you, hey, there's something wrong. Come and correct it, because your house is going to be burning if you don't do anything about it. And so what you see now is governments are starting to persecute whistleblowers and the journalists that publish that information. And thereby they're basically switching off the alarm system of society, which means that anything that goes wrong is now allowed to fester and to consolidate into criminal structures behind the curtains, which you can no longer get rid of, you see? And that's why they're persecuting these people, because they want to protect those criminal structures.
Anybody want to jump in on that comment?
I will, if I can. If you look at whistleblowers that we had, Chelsea Manning thrown in prison and then exonerated or released, and none of the charges, there was no apology. There was nothing done. Snowden is outside of the country, can't return because he blew the whistle on the NSA spying on us, on everything we do, and no apology to him. He still can't come back to the country. If he comes back to the country, he'd probably be prosecuted too. And then obviously all of the whistleblowers who worked with WikiLeaks over the years, all of them have been demonized by their industries. So I agree with what he's saying there wholeheartedly. So you have to have protections to be able to expose the rot that's in a lot of the systems, the military, the banking systems, just all across the board, And I'm sure there's people like even at the FDA, or people who are at the CDC, or I'm sure there's people who know all kinds of stuff, and they're scared because they see these prosecutions run rampant and ruin people's lives, so they're scared to come forward and say anything.
Right. Absolutely. So, in this case, I mean, you have Chelsea Manning, who was the one who had the access and who leaked things. And I've got the Assange indictment right here. It's probably going to be really too small for everyone to see well, but I encourage you to just Google it. You'll find it. And there's a whole lot of, this conspiracy to commit hacking. And I'll pull another thing up in a minute on that. But the conspiracy to get information from Chelsea Manning, who is the one who actually, if you want to say broke any laws, it was Manning who had access to this and just gave it to WikiLeaks and they published it. But they're trying to criminalize journalism. I mean, it's normal. Journalists solicit information from sources all the time. And so they're trying to criminalize that effort. And also by this, let's see, I think it's on page 2 here. Actually, I'm going to pull up another slide. Matt, I'll let you take it for just a moment while I pull that one up.
Sure. But I mean, some of the things we hear from you all about why you're, again, taking this stand that you are doing, which is not what a lot of candidates are willing to do. It comes to these same issues again of censorship, of the public's right to know, of an individual's right to speak, and the tools that are then used against them, the fear. But then also what we hear too, and I'm hearing tonight as well, is you all are identifying that this is just not about foreign policy. This is just not about national security. If anyone thinks that if Julian Assange is brought to the U.S. and is convicted, that the federal government is only going to use it in cases regarding things that happen overseas or foreign policy or national security, you're crazy, right? Because we've already seen it this past week with the gentleman who revealed those tax returns, the IRS whistleblower, receiving 5 years in prison. And the extension of this could mean then that the government could then go after the New York Times for publishing that information, right? And whether it's that type of information, whether it's healthcare, right, whether it's financial information, whether it's economic information, you can see how all those types of things could be justified by a government to suppress, to say this information is important to us. This is a security thing for us. And it doesn't have to just be at the federal level, but at the state and the local level. So, I think, so that's a long-winded way of asking, what do you see in your campaigns that are resonating with you as you're out there running your campaigns, as you're talking to people? What kind of things are you connecting this issue with? Tom?
So it's a 99%er in my district, Todd, to say we got to take out the Supreme Court before they take out us. But to be more specific, freedom of speech is attacked on so many fronts. In Georgia, they're charging terrorism for being at a music festival adjacent to Cop City Park and seeking to put them in jail for 10 years and having bonds set extraordinarily high. And then when people are trying to raise money to pay the bond for the people who were arrested with no evidence and no basis for being having muddy shoes while they're at an adjacent facility, those people who are raising money are being charged with RICO offenses for organized crime. That's Georgia. Georgia's a glorious state compared to Florida. We have a determination to traumatize anyone who has any information detrimental to. So I see the Guantanamo prisoners as a corollary to Assange. They didn't do anything, and we're keeping him in prison for 20-something years with no charges because we're afraid that after how much we brutalize them, that they're now terrorists, because we sure would be if somebody did that to us.
Well, did you know, speaking of draconian laws here, okay, so I wanted to share this tweet here. Every time I tweet anything, this nice guy somewhere in North Carolina responds with, please call Congress. And I do want to emphasize right now that you should, I mean, we're showing these candidates here as an alternative to the ones that are in office now that won't stand up for Assange. But this is, I mean, we're less than 2 weeks away from day X in his last hearing. So I do want to share that. Please call your current members of Congress, 202-224-3121, or, just Google the exact office where you need to call and tell them to sign H-Res 934 to drop charges. But anyway, at the top of this tweet here, and this is a story I saw from Kevin Gostola on the Espionage Act, and this was just terrifying. I thought, oh my God. They're currently treating just the use of privacy tools, like, I don't know, a VPN, just using IT security tools as evidence of criminality. So that's kind of where we are. And I feel like there's a lot of, there are just a lot of people that aren't aware that this is happening. Yes, please jump in.
Just a quick point. I was on Twitter this morning and I saw a post from a lawyer who was suggesting that Tucker Carlson could be potentially charged under the Espionage Act for his trip to Moscow in order to interview Vladimir Putin. And I'm afraid that we're going to see more of that. There's been this, I think, from Assange, this chilling effect in the media, where journalists are afraid to speak out against the narrative pushed by the establishment. I think that maybe we wouldn't have gone into the war with Ukraine if journalists hadn't been afraid to talk about the history of Ukraine. What happened before the Russian invasion. And that's all.
Yeah, well, a lot of the clips, as you know, that I show are from Randy Credico's show. And one of my favorite series that he did was not too long ago with author Adam Hochschild. And if you're interested, please go check it out. I did an extensive slideshow to go along with this interview. But he wrote American Midnight, and it's all about the Espionage Act, and it goes, tells the story of all this suppressing dissent using the Espionage Act back in 1917. It's a fascinating. Get the book obviously, but if you want to watch the interviews, there are 2 on Live on the Fly with Adam Hochschild. So it's not anything new. I think just most of us don't know that this is there and how this could be used against us. And another thing that I really noticed in reaching out to candidates this time, it's been a while since I've done that work. And previously it was right after Bernie ran, and the organization that I worked with, it was an anti-corruption contract organization. And we had a lot of what I would call small d Democrats. And I can't find very many of those now. And I think when I first started this, the first 2 that we did, I kind of cringed when anybody would say anything partisan, because I'm trying really hard to just show that it doesn't matter what party you're with, that this affects everyone. But it's the giant elephant in the room that there aren't that many Democrats. I had one that was interested, and then their campaign manager stepped in and put the stop to that. So that leaves me with my next clip, which I think I shared with our Democrat on the call here. And this is another one of Randy's, a clip from another one of his great interviews. But this is Stephen Kinzer, and I gave him a little quick introduction here. But this explains why we don't have that many Democrats on board with this issue. And I hope we can break through that and make them understand that this is really about transparency in government. Stephen Kinzer, award-winning journalist, author, and former New York Times foreign correspondent for more than 20 years, has written several books that tell the true stories of U.S. actions abroad throughout history and pull the curtain back on powerful actors in the U.S. Go to stephenkinzer.com and also check out Randy Credico's interviews with him.
Do you surmise that it's the CIA that is the driving force behind the persecution of Assange?
I'm not so sure that it's the key force. I really think that there were a group of American politicians led by Hillary Clinton who were very embarrassed and humiliated by Julian Assange revealing what hypocrites they were and what lawbreakers they were. Her lies were revealed by Julian Assange. So I think she and the whole American political establishment, which Hillary Clinton represents, have a bitterness against Assange. And it really is a classic case where the people who commit the crime are scot-free and respected citizens, and those who reveal the crimes are persecuted. That is the essential perversion of the Assange case. I completely agree with you on its importance. They have been torturing this guy. There's no other word for it. They have tried to destroy him, and they may be very close to doing that. Now they want to try to bring him here and put him in one of the world's most highest security and harshest prisons. I think every day that he's suffering in some prison cell somewhere makes Hillary Clinton and some of the people around her feel good. So that's where I think a lot of this is coming from. There's certainly institutional anger for years for revealing secrets, but I think it's more in the political establishment that you get this intensity. The people that would come down on Biden if he ever tried to make some kind of a deal to free Assange. They're coming from American political, elected and sort of corporate officials like Hillary Clinton, not so much from those anonymous people inside the security apparatus.
Anyone want to comment on that?
Well,
yeah, if I can jump in on this.
Go ahead.
If I can. What's sad, what's so sad about this whole situation and the time that we're living in is the politicians, there's case law all over the place. There's the First Amendment itself, and then the case law that's been determined ever since. But the politicians that we've got in office right now have gotten so lazy that they don't want to address this head on, that we've essentially outsourced what free speech rules are to billionaire tech companies, and we're letting them write policy We are letting them have the protections of a publisher when in fact they're acting as editors, which this, for Julian Assange specifically, is they're prosecuting him as an editor, as if he is responsible for what he's just publishing. So we're giving protections to all of the big tech companies, and none of the politicians that we have in right now want to take responsibility for the rules that we are enforcing, the rules that we have set, and instead they're happy to outsource it and have hearings every once in a while where Zuckerberg can turn around and just say, "Oh, I'm sorry." But that's where we're at, because they don't have the spine to stand up for the Constitution that they swore to protect. Simple as that.
Well, I think the observation about Hillary being embarrassed has permeated down through the state level Democratic parties, down to the county level parties. I was arrested on UF campus for having private conversations at a public event because the hostess of the event, who later I found out worked for my opponent, told the police that she would not allow anyone to talk about politics at her event. Now, the outcome of this was a video that got 400,000 views of the police handcuffing me and throwing me on the ground with little notations. U.S. policy says everything he was doing was right, blah, blah, blah. And 400,000, almost every one of them are Republican, defended my First Amendment rights. And other the Republican candidates in my district called and told me that they were on my side. And the Democrats said, "Tom, why didn't you just leave?" To which I responded, "If I do not stand up for my own rights, how should I convince you that I will stand up for your rights?" And it is a disease.
So this is what happens when we become too partisan and can't see certain issues affect all of us. I don't know, Teef, would you like to jump in and comment any more on that? Or
about partisanship?
Well, really anything. I've got plenty of clips I can play here, but I really wanted to give candidates the floor here as well. I mean, please feel free to jump in at any point if you have more you want to say.
Well, I mean, the number one thing that for me where I am in California is that the California government is a supermajority, and they are trying to set policy, and Bonta and Newsom are essentially trying to protect schools that are gender transitioning kids without telling the parents. And that's really serious. The kids are really at risk here in California. We're a sanctuary state for partial birth abortion and for gender transition, gender mutilation. And then with respect to the January 6th people, that's a big concern. I mean, you have people that are in prison, still awaiting trial with no bail, haven't been charged, and there's an incredible amount of lies that are coming out about that whole narrative and what happened there. And there is an incredible amount of partisanship in this country right now, and a lot of it has to do with the radical ideas that people have. And I don't know how you come together or compromise or negotiate with people who think that men can become women and women can become men, and that it's okay.
Well, I think we may have lost. I think we may have lost our Democrat candidate. So it's really hard to stay on topics that don't trigger other people.
Are we? Oh, okay. So there's a Democrat, a Republican, and then there's some Greens and.
Yep, but it's fine. He may have had to leave for other reasons.
There's a Democrat. Isn't Tom Wells a Democrat?
Yes, we had two. I think he may have had to leave for another reason. It's not a problem. It's just that's been.
I didn't like what he said, but I'm still here.
Right. Exactly. Right. It is hard to stay on one topic, though, I think, and that's what's been so hard in getting
Well,
candidates.
I wish we could all look at the Constitution and all agree on what the Constitution means. And I think what we're experiencing here is that we're not doing that. We all have a different interpretation of what it means to have freedom of speech or what it means to have the right to bear arms. So that's where our differences are coming from.
Right. And I think that it's
Constitution.
fueled by when you are, just see your side as against the other side, then you end up going maybe against something you were for before, just because it's a total team sports mentality. But I know everyone here realizes that. But Sean, but you wanted to say something as well.
Yeah, tangentially, I want to tell you about a local politician / activist in my community who fully bought into Russiagate, and I think as a consequence of that, or as part of that, despises Julian Assange, despises Edward Snowden, thinks they are, I don't know, Vladimir Putin is the devil incarnate, and I suppose people like Julian Assange are his minions, his demons. That's the impression I've gotten from her. And so she and I haven't seen eye to eye on any of that, of course. But I just want to, and I think that was for purely partisan reasons. I think she is a Democrat. She identifies very strongly with the Democratic Party, and she believes that only the Democratic Party can save this country. And so she'll fight tooth and nail against any perceived threat to the party. But, and I apologize, I see everything through the lens of war, through Gaza, through Ukraine, but she has a public forum. I want to reveal her identity. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, but she has a very public forum, and because of Gaza, and because she feels so strongly about what's happening in Gaza, and she's so upset with what the Democratic Party as an institution is doing, the way that the Democratic Party as an institution has supported what is happening in Gaza, she is now supporting my campaign. And she's even flying my yard sign, and she is now inviting me onto her public forum, and she's inviting other people with big public forums, radio shows, et cetera, to bring me on. I think, and I'm just suggesting that this may be a point of leverage. I think that specifically what's happening in Gaza, and I don't know, maybe some people in the room don't agree with this, but to me, it's very clear that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. And I think something like 50% of 2020 Biden voters also think that. And in some ways, I think it may be breaking the spell. So she's at least now able to look past my support for Assange in order to talk to me about Gaza. But I think that it may be, like, let's just say, a gateway into changing their thinking on some of these other things. Like this party that's been complicit in genocide, maybe it's wrong about some of these other important issues as well. I'm seeing some cracks. So that's
absolutely. Oh, don't think when I pull you off, if you're on solo and I move you back, keep talking. I'm just trying to get up my next slide here. But I think you're right. I mean, my daughter's 19, and I think we live in a very blue area, and I think she's seeing that as well. And from what I hear from her, a lot of younger people it is, as you said, breaking the spell, and not just younger people. But I'm sorry that we lost our other Democrat. I really appreciate him coming. And that has been the biggest challenge, is in my reaching out to Democrats. And I'm afraid a lot of people are going to wake up and realize that they ushered in these terrible, like, mass surveillance and censorship and all of this stuff because they were blinded by a party. And I think that's just really, I don't know. It's very frustrating to deal with. And on that note, I've got the perfect other Meltzer clip here. It was just one of my favorite interviews with him, and it's 3 minutes, so bear with me, but it's about the psychology of denial. It's really interesting.
in order to divert attention away from the monumental revelations made by WikiLeaks that prove, these hundreds of thousands of documents that prove that it's not that, the rule of law and democracy is threatened. What we can see here is that by and large, it has already been kind of neutralized. There is a parallel universe where intelligence services are cooperating behind the backs of their own parliaments and their own people. And the diplomatic cables give ample evidence for this. And in order to divert attention from the war crimes and that corruption and the torture, it's a well-known technique. You just take the spotlight and put it on the individual and say, here's a traitor, a rapist. He doesn't feed his cat. You make a simplified, juicy story that the average citizen can understand and can handle, because now he has a scapegoat he can blame, and then the system remains untouched. So the elephant in the room disappears, vanishes somehow in the shadows. It's very irritating to see that the public allows this to happen. But this is just human nature. This case even triggered my interest so strongly that I studied this together with a neuroscientist and a social psychologist and submitted a report to the UN General Assembly on the neurobiology and the social psychology of precisely this pattern of denial. We human beings, Randy, you and I, Daniel, Angela, all of us, we don't like to receive uncomfortable news. So if we hear something that we don't like, we have almost, biologically an instinct to deny it, to push it away if we can. That's our biological functioning operating system. That's just the way we are. And this is being exploited because by the leaders of the countries, because if you accept that the system is corrupt, well, what does that mean? It means you have to change the system. Well, that's complicated. That's difficult. It's a lot of work. That's uncomfortable. You don't know how to do it. So so actually you're relieved when you can just blame Assange. You see?
Yeah.
It's an easy way out that everybody likes, because now we can blame somebody and we don't have to worry about the system. And unfortunately, that's very much a reality until people suffer so much, like French Revolution or so, that they have to react and rebel against the powerful. When it becomes more painful to remain passive than to actually rebel, then they react.
So pretty powerful stuff from Meltzer there. So I wish Ray, I'm going to send him a clip of this part because he left, but that's okay. So I wanted to give a huge shout out to someone named Paula who works with Assange Defense Boston, and go to her Twitter. I believe it's @Pluseal. I'll have to double check that. Or go to Assange Defense Boston. You can find this. But she has put together this evidence files, which I intend to deliver in person, as many as I can, although it's like 100 pages, to congressional offices personally. I'm going to do that next week. But she compiled all of this, and it is just phenomenal. And I encourage you to share this with anyone that has questions about the case and wants to know, the facts of the case, not everyone's opinion, but the facts of the case. So on that note, I wanted to get into this about the evidence. So the U.S. Department of Justice has charged Assange with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. And this is really important for a couple of reasons. But number one, he's got this, he's been accused of being a hacker, and that's what a lot of people think. Well, right here, you can see these chat logs, and you can actually go within this and click on it and look at the actual documents themselves and see that, first of all, we don't know who Nathaniel Frank is. And even if that is Assange, it shows right here that Manning never was able to get into the system and hide her identity. So that you'll have it's complicated. You have to sort of dig in a little bit here, but the accusation was that Assange helped hack. There is zero evidence of that. And in fact, everything here tells you that they have come out and said, in the hearing, let's see, go down here. Okay. Assange was not identified as the person Manning was talking to. Manning already had access to all the files she leaked. There is no evidence the password hash Manning asked for help with was cracked. Cracking the password was not technically possible. This is the most important point, and it was conceded by the prosecution. The password could not confer anonymity, and it is likely the password was for uploading software for entertainment. So it's really important to understand this, and also the fact that even if he had done that, the charge for that, the punishment is 5 years. Well, we're so far beyond that. So anyway, please go and check out Paula's evidence files. It's phenomenal. It's everything you need to know about the case. So yeah, I'm not an expert on it, and it's a lot of information. So just share it. So let's see. We're coming up on an hour. I did have one more clip.
Go ahead, Michael. Well, while Kelly pulls up the clip, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I do want to say Ray left a message, and maybe because it came in a private chat, you guys didn't see it.
Okay.
He did leave a message at 8:38, and thank you for the opportunity. Next time I will participate. I have to go to another meeting, and so he didn't just pop off and disappear.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. And I appreciate the information and videos that is specific more to Julian Assange. And as I said before, I guess coming from a place where, on street level, we've often had a distrust of the government. We've seen people framed, and arrested for crimes, and the police saying, that, trumped up charges, with the war on drugs had a heavy impact on especially, minority communities. So, I'm used to these trumped up charges and things happening even on the basic street level. So when I see this happening higher up, to someone like Julian Assange, it looks very familiar. So I'm not surprised that it happened, and it is something that we should be concerned about because it could affect any of us become whistleblowers. If you go against, the government, you run that risk. I mean, the people that the 60s and Dr. Kings and the Malcolm X's and all those, they ran that risk when they went against the government, the establishment of getting trumped up charges when they were trying to say, well, this is what's going on. And so I see that this situation, even though I didn't know all the facts about Julian Assange's case, and I'm not an expert, it is a continuation of a pattern that I've seen over and over. Thank you.
Right. I mean, it's like until it happens to you or your team, maybe you don't recognize it. But so I've got another clip here, and this is specifically, we're not going to have time to get into all of it, but there is some stuff going on with the hearing that's going to be on the 20th and 21st. And Craig Murray wrote about it today that it's supposed to be a public hearing, but they're doing everything they can to try to keep it not public. Matt, did you hear about this?
No, I haven't seen what Craig wrote about it yet.
Okay. So they're trying to keep it private, and it shouldn't be. It's supposed to be public. But this I'll pull that up as well. But this clip here talks about exactly just how things have not been going according to the normal rules. And Assange was kept in this glass box during the last couple of hearings, I believe. And Randy was there and actually took these photos. So, but he's talking about it here with George Galloway.
We have a photo here of what it looked like, Julian Assange. You look at him in a glass cage, a bulletproof glass cage, and look at what you see 50 years earlier, 60 years earlier. It's almost the same situation in Tel Aviv with Eichmann. All right? Eichmann actually had access to his lawyers in the courtroom and was treated better than Julian Assange. And he's the mastermind of the Holocaust. All right. And now let's take a look at another person that was held for extradition, and that's General Pinochet, who murdered 30,000 Chileans, including Spanish citizens and Garzón. This is him under house arrest. Look at that. Tough conditions, huh? With Maggie Thatcher.
The comparison with Eichmann is particularly chilling. And it's one of the things I genuinely don't understand about this whole situation with Julian in Britain. Even if Britain had already decided that they were going to accept the demands of the United States and eventually deport into a supermax in the US, this whistleblower, this publisher, this journalist, I don't quite understand why they have chosen to be so utterly beastly about the whole affair. There's no reason for him to be in a glass case. He's accused of having published documents. He's not a terrorist or a murderer. He's not a war criminal. So why keep him in those circumstances? Why strip search him 9 times in one morning on the way to court?
Yeah. So,
brutalization. Aaron Swartz got permission to download documents from a database. He downloaded a lot of them. They charged him with downloading too many and put him in jail. They threatened him with 30 years in jail. He committed suicide. One of the brilliant minds of that generation. Sorry to jump in.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is what, if people start knowing the truth about this case, then this is all going to fall apart. And they've counted on, the powers that be, counted on people not knowing, not understanding. And so, yes, Craig Murray, you can go to craigmurray.org/.uk, State Secrecy and Public Hearings Part 1. So, again, it's supposed to be public, but this is what they're ordering here. You have to send an email. You have to show that you're okay. Here we go. Rules for third-party observers. You're being given remote access to a public court hearing. Do not share your link without permission. The link must only be used by someone else if it has approved by the court. Anyway, so people have been sending emails, and they've received so many emails that they're now showing that they're getting responses back saying, we have too many emails, we'll respond back in 5 days. So I've been kind of looking into a way around that. I think maybe people could start emailing every associated email address with that court instead of just this one. And I think people should email also the Department of Justice. But it's going to take, it's power in numbers. And that's why I'm doing this here, because I think that we can end up in these silos of media, whether it's TV, regular corporate media, or independent media. There's so much going on all the time that you can't possibly keep up with everything. So we end up in these silos, and unless we start talking to regular people across the country, which is my whole purpose of doing this, it's not going to change. And it won't be just Assange. It'll be someone else next time. And it might be, what if next time it's on your team, somebody, then they're punished. Maybe that's what it takes. But with that, we are at the hour mark. And so I have a song going out here. I've played Meltzer's music the last couple of times. And I really do want to continue. Well, I would like to see the charges dropped. However, I think the punishment has been the process for Assange. And I think that, unfortunately, he may be left sitting there. And the next step is the appeal to the Human Rights Court. But unless he is released on the 20th or 21st, I will continue this, and I will keep trying to reach out to candidates. And I love, and part of why I went alphabetically through Ballotpedia was I love when I got a couple that are in like adjacent districts that happened on the first panel, because I think maybe then those candidates, and I don't think they were even in the same party, it didn't matter. They might get together, and maybe more people that live in those districts start to hear about this, and we can start dispelling the myths. But please do go to Paula's her evidence files, and maybe she's got it in like really nice pictures and graphics and everything that are easily digestible for people to start reading about this. So with that, anyone want to say anything else before I close out with this song?
If I can, real quick. Day
Yeah,
X is
go
coming.
ahead.
Less than 2 weeks away, Day X. I've been reaching out to activists and organizations in my area. Stella has been doing interviews almost nonstop. It doesn't matter where you are. We're not going to be at the courthouse in London, but if you have 3 people who go out in town square and stand there and just tell people who are passing by that this is happening, just like the ICJ case, no one knew that there was a genocide case going on. So just being out there, getting the word out that this is happening, that this groundbreaking trial is occurring, is more than Stella has asked for, is just get the word out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is to remind people to call your members of Congress, tell them to support House Resolution 934, McGovern Gosar, but 934, and have your members of Congress understand that this is an issue that they can't be in denial of. I think that Meltzer clip is probably my favorite one of all the ones you put up, Kelly. That Meltzer one about denial is so important, because it helps explain why you see our politicians denying this is happening, while you see journalists in the U.S. denying this is happening. So, that said, Meltzer also talks about being willing to change the system, which is something that all of you are committed to do through your candidacy. So I want to thank you for that courage, that commitment, that conviction. And, thank you for joining us tonight and for supporting Julian Assange and press freedom.
If you thought you saw your freedom, it was truly a mirage. Freedom's locked a cell away from Julian Assange. Our First Amendment rights are by his side behind bars, and the next voices silenced will be ours. Rest assured, democracy is rotting in the dark. Rest assured, we vilified dissenters, pushed out black renters, and tore down their housing just to build a little urban park. God, I tell you, old America really knows how to leave its mark. Blaze a trail, leave 100 scars. Rip your free speech out your throat, demonize the man who told you it was so, and leave him freezing in a cell in Belmarsh. Perpetually awaiting extradition. Thrown to the wolves of claustrophobia and malnutrition. And all that we can hope is that we catch Uncle Joe in a fleeting lucid moment of his flickering senile fascist mission. That maybe we could trick him into thinking Julian is just some sweet blonde middle school Christian, and she got mixed up with a few bad apples, slapped with some charges, and thrown into prison. Joe would set him free without a moment's hesitation under one condition: that he can sniff her hair before she goes back to school and he goes back to business. But if Joe's just had his shots, then we haven't got a chance of getting past his black and white vision, getting past his gut reaction to appease all of his donors' sick requests and shape policy and law around corporate mandated decisions. So really, all along, I think Julian was one man standing in a tempest with the fearlessness of true conviction. And if his is the only conviction we see after he shed a light on this country's most poisonous schemes all come to fruition, and we all collectively stare at the ground because we felt like our hands were too tied beyond signing petitions, while he's tortured to death for attempting to warn and enlighten admittedly not quite the brightest of citizens, and half of this country just won't take the time to uncover the truth, or they just don't mind, so they're quick to dismiss it and say it's a difficult position. Then we're back to the comfort of centrist delusion. We're right back to sleep for those ignorant sheep who resisted themselves into one protracted contusion, twisting themselves into knots to correct all your stimulus check-based confusion, wrapping their necks around their backs as they justify overflow migrant detention or fracking pollution. Then Kamala laughs, and the camera pans down to her shoes. And that footage is 90% of your 6 o'clock news. Except for a feel-good story about a man who at 95 years young just made Employee of the Month at Whole Foods. And the $50 gift card means this month he'll afford his prescriptions and meals, and he won't have to choose. This is the machine that a man named Julian Assange threw his body on the gears of for you. So to cry out for his freedom is the least that we can do. Now best believe the feds will serve to muddy up the truth, but rest assured the temperature in Belmarsh is an icy 22, and Julian is shivering in a solitary room without a view. Rest assured Obama loves a whistleblower just about as much as he loves weddings where he doesn't get to detonate the groom. Rest assured Obama bought the plot where all our First Amendment rights are gonna rot and demanded that they carve his smiling likeness on the tomb. So that when you come to pay respects to your free speech rights and a somber feeling hits you and you look up to the sky, the answer will be staring you right in the eyes to the questions of why and of who. So if you thought you saw your freedom, then they wanted you to. Human rights are mutable, and Julian is proof. Our First Amendment rights are stuck in solitary too. And the next voice silent might be you.